Hello, friends, and welcome in for episode 13 of Vol Club Confidential. I'm your host, Austin Price of VolQuest.com. An exciting show tonight as we have Tennessee head coach Josh Heupel on the show. But before we get together with Coach Heupel, we bring in Spire CEO James Clausen. James, you're coming off a watch party for the Vanderbilt game in Nashville. You got another watch party coming up this weekend for the Missouri game. That's here in Knoxville. Kind of take me through what the reaction has been for those watch parties. You've had them in Chattanooga and Memphis, all over the state.
Yeah, Charlotte, Atlanta. So great response. I think fans have really enjoyed coming together, meeting other Vol Club members. There's been, we've gotten a lot of members that out of those watch parties too. So I think it's been a really cool experience. But yeah, Saturday night, Knoxville, Old City Sports Bar downtown.
When you get to those events, what can fans expect? Is it just simply watching the Vols?
Yeah, we're watching the Vols. We're there to answer questions. If you have questions about what we do and how we do it and things like that, we're there and we want to be able to answer those questions.
You look forward to next month, the SEC tournament. You all will be there. Kind of take me through some expectations and fan interactions you'll have at the SEC tournament.
Yeah, still working through that, but we'll have some stuff maybe before or after games, depending on what days they play in Nashville, but we're really excited about it.
All right, Tennessee playing well in basketball as they head towards the SEC tournament. Spring practice just over a month away, and we now bring in the guest for tonight's show, that being head coach Josh Heupel. Coach, we start off with your childhood. Kind of take me through growing up in Aberdeen, South Dakota. The population just over 20,000 probably back then. I was like 28 in 2020. So, what was that like?
Factory of football players, let me tell you, coming out of Aberdeen. My mom was a high school principal. My dad was initially a high school coach and then moved up to the Division II college there. And my childhood, as long as I can remember, was, going to sporting events. It could be the high school, it could be the college. With my dad, I remember driving to training camp 2 days, maybe 3 days at that time in college football, and being there at 5:30, 5:45 in the morning, and mixing some Tang up for the guys in the morning as they came in, probably eating donuts. Not sure that's on our menu in the mornings, but hanging around the guys, sitting in meetings. My dad was a defense coordinator, sitting in linebacker and DB meetings, being out on the practice field with them, and some buddies would come over, would be out at practice, hanging out. Spent time in the equipment room, changing face masks, cleats, the old screw-in cleats at that time, and my life centered around ball. Had a lot of family that was close by, and so a lot of time spent with family too.
Are there times where you smell a smell and it takes you back to doing those things? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's sometimes you just smell something or you hear a noise and it just reminds you, triggers back.
First day of training camp, cut grass, a little bit of dew on the ground. That takes me right back to my childhood for sure. And I just think about, the memories that I have growing up, being around our family, after his games or after my games too. A lot of family would be in town, and, he just takes you back. And then at the same time, with where I'm at now, incorporating our family, my kids out on the practice field a bunch with me and in the meeting rooms at times. And, my dad's still around, retired now, and so I get a chance to spend a lot of time with him out on the practice field or around our facility.
I know he's around enough it's a nice, as you told me back in the preseason, it's a nice set of eyes, and realistically an unbiased set of eyes, because he doesn't have a tie to wins or losses. I always want you to win, but at the same time, I think it's nice to kind of have that feedback of okay, he's not vested in this kid. He's just telling you what he sees. Yeah,
for me, you get into the middle of practice and you're in the nuts and bolts of it. At times, he can sit back and just kind of see a 360-degree view of everything that's going on, from equipment things to, coaching staff, or, maybe notice some things with the player's body language, whatever it might be. He doesn't get in the X's and O's very often, but for me, it's an unbiased opinion. I know I'm going to get it straight from what he sees to coming to me, and I appreciate that too. And again, for me, those are awesome moments.
If you've not seen Coach Heupel's dad, he's Coach Heupel with white hair and sometimes a mustache.
Not sometimes. He's always got the mustache, a little thicker at times.
I think it's sometimes he's shaved it and it's growing back in. When you go back to when you were, a ball boy and you were helping do all those things, at what point did you go, man, I just really want to play football? Is there a moment in time where you just knew that you wanted to play football and specifically quarterback?
I love basketball. I got to throw that out there. That's what
you keep telling me you're the best shot on campus.
You need to come over and check it out. For me, I grew up. Sports was everything in our family, and for me, I love playing, love competing, love doing, and being in the middle of it. When I grew up, there wasn't Little League football, so you couldn't play tackle football until 7th grade. So I played flag football 5th and 6th, tackle football in 7th grade, playing all those sports, baseball too, up until high school. I just loved whatever I was in, and whatever season it was, that's what I thought I wanted to be. After my sophomore year, played a bunch, started at quarterback, was 6-man in basketball. Were successful on the basketball side. I really enjoyed and grabbed onto the opportunity that a quarterback has to impact the game, the natural leadership position that you're in. I love the X's and O's of it, and that's when I kind of detoured towards football.
Yeah, when you played, not to date you. You had in basketball. You might have been in that transition from the real short shorts to the big baggy shorts that was in the early 90s.
Oh, we got the baggy shorts. There's no doubt. I can't believe it's trending back the other way at this point.
And then in football, you had those big oversized jerseys, the big shoulder pads. Today everything's so form fitted. The quarterbacks in the NFL look like they're not even wearing pads at times.
Yeah, the weight of the equipment. I don't know how much faster I would have been. You know what I mean? I would have been able to shake some people down. No, it was just a lot of fun growing up in that era.
What was it like playing high school football in a small town, South Dakota? Because, I can just imagine, back in the 90s, 80s, 90s, the lights at the stadiums weren't real great, so I was just very dark in the end zones, and just kind of the whole town came out, because that's what people did back then. There was no streaming of games, there was no Twitter and all the social stuff that people don't go out to now. They just kind of invested in the community stuff.
Yeah, sports in Aberdeen and in that area were a huge part of what the community did. That's the school, great student body support, but the whole community would come out and show out for those events. And Friday nights were awesome. We weren't a highly successful football program when I first got there, and we kind of built it up to being a football team that had a chance to compete for a championship. We didn't win one, but became a really good program. And then on the basketball side of it, we're a perennial power, one of the top 2-3 teams inside the state, won a bunch of conference championships. And we played JV, sophomore, varsity, and by halftime of the sophomore game, the arena was sold out. You couldn't find a seat. And, growing up in that town, everybody grew up dreaming of being on that field or on that court, and a great sense of pride within our community. You
go to Weber State, and then from there you end up going to Snow College after an ACL tear. Mm-hmm. Kind of take me through that time in your football career. What's that like? What are you thinking? It all leads to Oklahoma and a national championship and a Heisman runner-up. But in that moment in time, kind of what is younger you thinking?
Man, really confident in who I am as a player and work habits and all that. But at the same time, your journey's your own, and there's a lot of uncertainty. And for me, walked on at the junior college, paid my own way. Lived in a 3-bedroom apartment with 7 other guys, so you can imagine how tight the quarters were. And Snow Junior College, loved my time there, but it's on the other side of the Wasatch Mountain front. There's nobody on that side. It was a one light town. There wasn't a lot to do when you weren't working on football. We're really successful. Had a lot of really good players that were there. Some guys that went and played in the NFL that were teammates of mine. But it wasn't glamorous by any stretch of the imagination. You're talking about 16, 17 7-hour bus trips. We'd load up Thursday night at midnight, drive through the night, end up in Vegas, get a breakfast buffet, and get back on the bus. And you're all over the state of Arizona at that time. That was who was in our league, and so you're in Yuma, Arizona, and playing a game Saturday afternoon, maybe Saturday evening, and didn't get back until late Sunday, and you're staring the week right back in its face, and best of time, worst of times, all at one time, and a lot of fun though.
Best story you can tell from those bus rides from your time in JUCO?
The best ones I probably can't tell on this radio show, but at that time every seat was full, so I would lay not in the aisle but across. We'd have one guy in each two seat that had the primary seat. I'd lay down the aisle and somebody have their legs over the top, and it was crammed full. You're talking about 17 hours.
Yeah.
And you get to know everybody inside your football team really quickly.
You know all the habits and bad habits.
That's right.
You end up going to Oklahoma. You have this unbelievable storybook career there, and you finish runner-up for the Heisman. You win a national championship. If you told the kid that was the Gatorade Player of the Year in South Dakota that in a couple of years he'd be the starting quarterback at Oklahoma, a blue blood drop program, playing in the Orange Bowl against Florida State for the national title, what would that kid have said?
First of all, you would have realized he was living a dream, for sure. I don't know that I would have ever said that that's how I saw my road winding and finishing up. At the same time, had a lot of confidence in myself and who I was and how I worked and what type of teammate I was going to be. And that time at Oklahoma, going to a program at that time, they hadn't been to a bowl game for I think 5 straight years, and it was a unique time inside that program, a unique set of guys that are still really connected. It's amazing to see how highly successful those players are outside of the game now. They've taken those characteristics and traits and turned it into life lessons that have allowed them to be successful in all areas of business and life. And it was the coolest journey, man, and really a lot of fun in building and resurrecting something, and something that for me has kind of always been the best times. I talked about my high school program. We weren't highly successful, didn't have a lot of wins when I first got there, or even my sophomore year, and kind of built that program up. Same at Oklahoma, and it's been a lot of fun.
Kind of same here when you got here versus
Yeah, I think
I know you're still in the building, but
we definitely
but similar
are.
like where you started.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that I recognized and saw in Tennessee. Having played here as a competitor, having grown up seeing the Power T, the power of this program, this football program, and the fan base, I saw a unique opportunity. It's rare that you get an opportunity to take over a prestigious program like this, top 10 in the history of college football, and wins. And at the same time, you get a chance to do it in your own way. And when I, got an opportunity to take this thing, it was a no-brainer. It just, you get the right alignment, man, you can go accomplish a lot of great things. And we got great people inside the building. Our staff and our players are absolutely phenomenal.
So when you're up there on the stage at the Orange Bowl, tossing out oranges, was that one of those moments where, like, man, 20 years ago I was doing the same thing as a player?
Man, it hit me, going to the game, I knew there would be things that would, take me back in time, absolutely. And, going down there for media day brought back some things, 2 or 3 weeks before the game. But the bus ride in was the same route that we took into the stadium when I was a player, and just being along that path. Billy Ray Johnson, who's our chief of staff, was a part of our program at Oklahoma too. I just leaned back and I said, man, this literally takes me right back to that moment. And had a bunch of teammates that I played with that came in a day or two before the game, and got a chance to see them on the sidelines before the game. And then I got a chance to celebrate with them afterwards too. It was a cool take you back moment.
How neat is that? And you talked about just the brotherhood, but, to get to see them at different stops along the way, whether that's when you were at OC at Missouri or at UCF, now here, just kind of getting to stay in touch with some guys. And I know you're busy, doing your own thing, got your own family, just like they're busy with their families, but to kind of reconnect every now and again and just kind of tell some old war stories and catch up. How much fun is that?
Yeah, I've gotten to be a lot better player over the years, and I think they have too. It's something that I talk about with our players, of enjoying the journey and enjoying the small moments, man, the things that you miss. You obviously miss game day, but you miss the interactions. You miss being in the locker room, cracking jokes on each other, telling stories. You miss the pain, the heartache, and the blood, the sweat, the tears all summer long. You miss all those things, and it's unique because of those shared experiences, because of the things that you've had to go through together as a group of guys inside of that locker room, the uniqueness of that being such an influential part of your life, that 18 to 22-year-old experience. As soon as you see those guys, man, you go right back to where you were. And you stay in touch with a bunch of them, but that doesn't mean that it's happening, once a week or once a month. Sometimes it's once a year. And, I got a chance to celebrate or go back and see one of our teammates inducted in the College Football Hall of Fame. And there were probably 25, 30 guys there. And that was a great night, just reliving some of the moments.
If you could go back, there was a time machine, and you could walk through a portal, not the transfer portal, but a portal, and go back to one moment in your playing career. High school, Pee Wee, JUCO, Oklahoma, where would it be?
Man, as a player, there was probably a game or two in high school I'd go back to and try to right a wrong and end up with a win and get ourselves to the state championship game. As a player, you sometimes, and as a coach for sure, you remember some of the losses. But as a player, I'd go back to, probably our month in October where we played, 3 ranked teams. I think 2 of them were number 1, number 2 in the country. And just the energy that was created, the belief inside of our fan base and enjoying that journey with our guys.
Playing in Aberdeen just feels like there's some old guys sitting around a barbershop that are like, man, you remember when that Heupel kid played here? And you know what I mean? They love to tell the past. I won't say it's like, it's Floyd's Barbershop in Mayberry, but at the same time, it's a nice reflection of kind of like the small town USA. Is that kind of where it was?
Yeah, I remember, my dad radio show when he was a high school coach, Saturday mornings. A bunch of guys inside the community. We had 2 high schools, but there were some small town high schools around the area. They'd do a radio show, and every coach got on there, and it was kind of coffee time, man, and telling stories from the night before. Those are great memories for me, just being around it. But I think, for all of our teammates that played there, we still relive some of those moments too, and I'm sure people in the community do as well.
Senior year, biggest rival, did you win that game?
We did on the football side of it. We lost the conference championship game to a perennial power, but we got most of the big time rivalries inside of our league.
Yeah, my senior year, we did not beat our biggest rival. James's Morristown West Trojans, James Clausen, who was on earlier in the program, beat my Morristown East Hurricanes 59-7. It was ugly. When you get done with Oklahoma, you have a couple stops in the NFL, and then you decided pretty quick to go into coaching.
Well, I didn't decide to go into coaching. I couldn't pass physical anymore, so the game told me it's time to
Could you pass the physical now?
No chance if I couldn't pass it then. Just coming off surgery and the injury that I had, just getting range of motion back, wasn't able to do it, and ultimately got into coaching. I knew whenever I was done, that's what I was going to do. So while I was rehabbing, I was back in Norman for 1 year, volunteered, spent a lot of time on the offensive side of the ball, spent some time with the offensive line. I think that was one of the best things that I did as a young coach, is experiencing what's going on up front. Not that I didn't understand the scheme, but the fundamentals, how to identify mismatches and how to protect your guys, put them in a position to be successful. It was really important to me in my growth as a coach.
When you're rehabbing, how much talk did you have with your dad about, I think I want to give this coaching stuff a try? I mean, I know you thought you might want to do it, but what was kind of his advice to you?
Yeah, I think once, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to pass the physical, failed one for the World League at that time, where guys went overseas and couldn't pass one to get into training camp. At the end of the day, he knew that coaching was going to be something that I did.
Sure.
I loved it. When I got into coaching, it was probably to be a part of something that's bigger than just you, be a part of a team, and the competition, the side of it, and the X's and O's. And as I've gotten further into it, it's what I saw in my dad's experience, the relationships you form, how you impact people, and helping them go pursue their goals and dreams. I think a lot of coaches, tell their kids, man, if you can do something else, go do something else, because you do sacrifice a lot. Our family sacrificed sacrificed. I sacrificed a lot of time with my dad, where it was just him and I, and he was on the road recruiting. But I think that's also because of my experience with my dad and understanding how valuable those experiences are, why we try to incorporate our families into absolutely everything that we do. And that's why you see them at Vol Walk, you see them on the field before the ball game. They're going to be in practices, they're going to sit in meeting rooms, they're going to be a part of the culture of Tennessee football.
Your family comes to Vol calls every week.
They do,
and then you get to, the
best 10 minutes is my ride home.
You ride home with your son.
That's right.
Kind of take me, I'm not asking you what you talk about, that's between you and him, but kind of take me through that. What do you think it's like for him? And then what's it like for you?
He loves being there. He likes feeling the energy and excitement. Occasionally he's going to jump on and try to be a part of the show as well.
It's the Calhoun's cornbread.
There's no telling what he is going to say when he gets on the radio too. It's live. It's my wife's biggest fear when he jumps on the mic. But the ride home is absolutely awesome. Sometimes it's football. It's usually not. What's going on in your day? And when you talk with him, man, he's going 1,000 different directions, so there's no telling where the conversation's gonna lead. But it's an opportunity for me as a dad just to spend some time, him and I, and kind of catch up on what's been going on.
So you get back, you start with the offensive line stuff as you just talked about. Then you go to Arizona, coach tight ends.
Yeah.
So you kind of all of a sudden started bouncing around here, former quarterback, coaching tight ends. What'd you learn in your year there?
Yeah, how to build a program, how to recruit when, you're going to have to compete against guys that maybe have some intrinsic, opportunities or advantages, and learned a lot of ball there, learned how to grow as a young coach, learned how to communicate and run your own room, and what do you want it to look like, what's the energy inside that room going to be, and develop those relationships. And so that year was a great year of growth for me, as a coach and as a person.
You come back to Oklahoma, and then you start this run on quarterbacks. So, Sam Bradford, you're instrumental in him winning the Heisman. You've had good quarterbacks every step of the way since then. During that run at Oklahoma, your biggest takeaway, because you go from being, national championship quarterback to now assistant coach. What are the differences?
Yeah, there's huge difference, just the amount of time that you're spending in the room, and I think learning how to recruit, learn how to develop those guys. You take some of the experiences that I had as a player, and you try to incorporate that and put those guys in a better position and make sure that they're going to be given every opportunity to be successful. I think some of the experiences are able to allow you to relate to your players as a young coach in a unique way, and you're competing on the biggest stage, week in and week out, and expected to win every ball game too.
When your time ends there, I know it didn't end like you wanted it to, but at the same time, it seems like you kind of got motivated from that, and you've been on this really quick climb since then. You have this fire in the belly, you're super competitive in everything you do. Like when you're competing with these recruits when they're in town, you don't like losing in anything. Has that always been that way, or did it maybe get amped up a little bit more coming out of that?
No, I've always been competitive. I think that dates back to just my journey, where I started and where I finished in my playing career too. That's probably one of my strongest traits if I take myself out of it and look back at myself. And I think that competitive spirit can drive you when nobody's watching to do the things that you need to continue to grow as a player. We look for that inside of our program. We want highly competitive guys that are going to ignite a fire under themselves. They're not looking for us to always ignite that spark. But certainly coming out of that experience, you learn, you grow. It was an opportunity for me to get away from Oklahoma and learn some other things under
Sure.
other people. A lot of things that I've taken from Oklahoma. There's some things that I've learned from other guys that I've been with too that have helped me allow to really grow as a person and how I want to connect and build a culture inside of a room. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I got an opportunity to get back to some things that I wanted to that are still a part of who we are here at Tennessee.
Any mentor, anybody that you leaned on during that time?
I don't know if there's one guy. The biggest people in my life, just because of the role that they have, is my parents, but also what they did professionally. Those guys are my mom and my dad.
Both leaders.
They are, and so those are people that I've certainly leaned on in all my experiences. As a player, I got recruited by Mike Leach. Mike's somebody that I stayed in touch with throughout my career. And that's, true to who he was, one of a kind, right?
Sure.
But he knew who he was, and he wasn't going to deviate. I took a lot of things from him. And then certainly on the X's and O's side of it, just, how you're going to play the game in space and looking at it from a different perspective. And that's certainly a part of who we are.
His tentacles are all over college football. Obviously, you're one of them, but your offense a little bit different than his. His so much more short stuff, and you all take a lot more shots vertically. When did you start to morph kind of what you had learned under him and build on it to build for yourself?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that Mike did is that at that time, the game was really being played in a box. And he looked at it differently. How do we get players in space? How do we get the ball in space? And in some ways simplified the game for those skill players, and in some ways the quarterback too. So those principles are still a huge part of what we've done. My first experience with tempo really happened when I was at Oklahoma. We came out of a Fiesta Bowl. We got beat by West Virginia. Rich Rod was the head coach. He had already left, but his staff was still there. Pat White and that crew kind of went up and down the field on us. We had a good team coming back. We were operating out of the huddle system at that time, but made a philosophical change, and that was a huge springboard to who we are and what we do offensively even today. You
get to Missouri and you put up some massive numbers up there with Drew Lock at quarterback. First taste of being in the league as a coach. Wouldn't equate it necessarily to Athens or Knoxville or Tuscaloosa, but still in the league. Yeah. What did you learn about competing in this league, playing in this league, all that?
Line of scrimmage is so different. The physicality, the depth of every program up front. You're going to have to strap it on and be an extremely physical football team week in and week out. And I think that's one of the things that is striking and probably in some ways we struggled with in year one is just the depth as we were developing our program here to be able to sustain 12 weeks of football inside of this league and great players all over the field, but the front seven defensively and obviously the line of scrimmage on offensive lines is just different here. And the other piece of it too is it was great for me is just getting exposed to the recruiting inside of this league. The landscape in recruiting is so different than it is in the other leagues. It's highly competitive, and it's something that you truly are doing. People say this, but you truly have to do it 365 days out of the year.
You get to UCF, you have a nice 3-year run there, the last year being the COVID year, which was just odd for everybody. Tennessee comes open. You had a few people that had some ties to here, like a Brandon Lawson who was in your building. Job comes open, and Danny calls. Kind of take me through what you're thinking at that point. Is this just like, I want to take a look at this? Is this, it's Tennessee, we got to go? All the stuff surrounding all the investigation stuff. Like, what's your thought process as Danny's called and now you're like, right in play there?
Yeah, Tennessee, the brand, the game day experience, the ability to compete at the highest level, all of those things were easy to see and known by me, things that I want to have an opportunity to do. You want to be able to take care of your staff, make sure that your players are having a great experience. We have all the tools and resources to do all of those things, and so now you get a chance to just compete. It was really important to me that leadership was aligned, and I say that meaning that your president, your chancellor, your athletic director, there's a clear vision on what they want, what they expect, and a pathway to help you get to where you want to go. Got a chance to talk to those 3 individuals and was really just blown away by their passion for Tennessee, the people of Tennessee, but their passion for Tennessee football and how important it was for them to see it be successful and be back on top.
Chancellor Plowman and what Randy Boyd, they're going to give you the best sales pitch. They're trying to get you here. Did it help having Danny, who you had just worked for, as like, okay, you're new to this too. What are you seeing?
Well, I think one of the things that was important to me is just figure out, what the landscape truly was.
Sure.
And so my relationship with Danny allowed me to have great trust, and the things that I was hearing were the actual things that were going on, and the truth of where we were at and how we were going to get to where we needed to go. And so the ability to have that relationship with him allowed me to trust everything that I was hearing, believe in the opportunity that was here. And then also, once I took the job, to truly hit the ground running from the first moment. And all of those experiences that we had, both positive and negative, what happens, when a player doesn't do exactly what he's supposed to do, to how we were going to build a program, allowed me to just hit the ground running and hire a great staff and go compete every single day.
All right, you come in, you pull in for the big press conference. Your son, we talked about this back in August. Your son wants to go out on the field and run around, which he does now before every game, and catches balls from you. But when that day ended and you kind of walked into what is basically an empty set of offices at that point, your thoughts?
Yeah, there weren't many people around.
What's that feeling like? Because all of a sudden it's like, okay, we got to build this thing. I mean, you knew a few guys that were coming with you, but you still had to construct a bunch of others.
Absolutely. Just going back to my son, he was the hardest sales pitch. Daughter was fully in from the moment. My son had a lot of tears there. But once he got off the plane, in the car, and then walked out onto the stadium before I got announced, when he looked around, he was like, all right, this is pretty cool. I'm all in. For me, the opportunity to walk into the building, meet the players, I think that was one of the most important things that I got an opportunity to do right at the beginning. They got a chance for them to get to know me, and with all the things and all the turmoil that they had been through over 2 months, gave them an opportunity to figure out who I was. I talked for maybe 10, 15 minutes, got a chance to introduce my family, but then we just sat there and talked for another hour and 15, hour and 30 minutes. Some of those things were really important that they wanted to talk about. Some of them didn't have a whole lot of impact on what we were going to do and who we were going to be, but they were important to them in that moment. And after leaving that, felt like we were going to be able to hit the ground running when we got back to work in a couple of days. Looked around the building. There weren't very many people still left in the building. Had a lot of guys from UCF that I knew were going to make the trip up in the coming days, and then had to go hire the rest of the staff and find the right people. People that are going to be share a vision of who I was and what we wanted to be about in the building. Then we're going to be great teachers, and I absolutely love the staff that get a chance to compete with every day.
And that's it for part one of our Vol Club Confidential with head coach Josh Heupel. Here's a sneak peek towards next week's part two with the head Vol. What game lives on in your memory the most as player or coach?
Man,
what sticks with you?
I don't know. I think the Orange Bowl, just the culmination of this season. If
you weren't coaching, what would you be doing?
Holy cow. I really don't have an answer for that one. I cannot imagine doing anything else at this point.